Welcome to this edition of BSW Tech Dive. I am John Lynch, Director of Business Development here at BSWUSA.com, broadcast supply worldwide, and our direct phone line 800-426-8434. My guest is John Bisset from Telos Alliance, and our topic is going to be Altus and Altus SE. And John, the first thing that I noticed about Altus, it began as a container. Now, you talk to
Absolutely.
me, an old sportscaster, a container is a big plastic bucket with a top on it when carrying stuff out to do a ball game.
I was
I,
going to say, you
I
kept your beer in that container, right?
yeah, or whatever. So in my case, a root beer. But anyway, but that's not exactly what you mean here as a container, correct?
So, John, probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, software developers came up with this thing called containers. And what these containers are small subsets of programs that do certain things. So, whether it's a banking software or if it's an inventorying type software. Anyway, these containers are very, very efficient because they don't need a whole big computer to run. They're a container that runs with many other containers on a server platform. So Telos looked at this and it was like, you know what? We can do this for some of our products. And that's what ended up happening. We started looking at the products that could be available in a container. So we became known for the containers for software for Altus and for VX and for other products. But a lot of engineers were not used to the issues with containers. There were, this is new. I don't really understand it. So we then moved to provide the container on a platform called the AP3000. This was a small server where we had the container already loaded on there for the engineer. Well, some engineers were saying, hey, that's still a little too complicated for me. I need something simpler. So we came out with Altus SE. And this is a small little box that is a computer that runs the Linux software, but it's a computer that has a console on it. It's a console in a box, if you will. All you do is add a network switch, and sources through your X nodes or through AES67, and the unit then a touchscreen unit to actually serve as the console surface, and you've got a console. So the thing that's neat about Altus is that it can be spun up really, really quickly, and it gives you the ability to put a console anywhere.
Console in a box. No,
That's what you could call it,
exactly.
John.
I mean, you're dealing with somebody like me who was back in on the air back in another century, and no, it just doesn't compute at all. But the efficiencies, though, because you're utilizing this with the AP3000 and such, I mean, you're making a computer out of nothing practically, or making a console out of nothing
Out of
basically.
nothing, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small little computer. In fact, we're using the same footprint of the same computer for our VX Duo, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see some other Telos products eventually migrating to this as well. Something I'd like to point out, John, Telos is not getting out of the business of building hardware. No, we're still going to be building hardware, but we saw the great efficiencies in doing software, and so we're now offering our products in the software realm as well. And now with the Altus SE and the VX Duo, we've got these small little computers. They're fanless, they're very efficient, and they don't cost a whole lot of money, which is really, really neat
Oh,
because radio stations can take advantage of that.
so it's kind of sounding to me, the old guy, that doing it this way, it's kind of like an electronic 6 foot tall rack. Is that
You know,
fair?
yeah, that's a really good analogy. In fact, one of our partners up in Canada, Axia Partners up there, has an equipment rack of equipment, and one over in the UK does as well. It makes a lot of sense to be able to do this, but if all you need is a console, then the Altus SE is your solution because there's your console. And John, the best part, starting out with 4 faders, but it can be expanded up to a total of 24 faders.
Mm.
It mimics the IQ console. So one of the things that's kind of neat about it is that it looks just like an IQ. So if you're used to the physical IQ console, when you switch over to Altus, all of the buttons are in the same location. They all do the same thing. It just makes it so much easier for the operator.
Oh. Now, and of course, we're dealing in the digital realm. So, Telos is big on live wire, but what if you're not
Yes.
a like an Axia house? Can you still use Altus for that or Altus SE?
Absolutely, John. In fact, that's probably the neatest thing. It has me most excited about this. Anywhere that you have AES 67, Altus can be used. So if you have brand W consoles, you can add Altus. If you have someone else's AES 67 console, you can add Altus. If you don't have any AES 67, you can still add Altus because you would have your own LiveWire network with the Altus, and then we would use what's called an X node, which converts the analog to the network system, to the network protocol. And so if you've got an old analog console, you can have the Altus and you can feed everything in through the X node to that Altus console. You don't have to have it be all digital in order to operate.
Now, as something that we talked about when we were talking about the VX Duo in a different Tech Dive show, we talked about the pre-sales conference and how important that is. Do we do that with the Altus also?
We recommend that, although especially with Altus SE, because it's coming with the software already built into or loaded onto the computer. But it's a good idea because this way we can make sure that you've got the right number of X nodes, that you've got the right network switch. If you don't have a LiveWire network, we can talk you through that, make sure that you have all the pieces that you're going to need in order to make Altus work.
If you're just starting out, how important is the wiring?
Well, it's a lot easier, John. One of the things that's so cool, we can put a studio in an afternoon, and I know older guys like you and me. What are you talking about? You've got to be crazy. There's no way you can do a studio in an afternoon. It's all Ethernet connections, so you're plugging and playing. And one of the things that's neat with this is where Steve Church's dream was that when he developed LiveWire, the LiveWire protocol. And we have the patents for the LiveWire protocol hanging in our office in Cleveland. So we're very proud of that, coming up with this technology. What's really neat about it, though, is that at some point, all equipment will have an Ethernet jack on it and will talk to all of the other equipment. And that was Steve's premise, or his goal, was that someday that would happen. We got very involved with AES 67, and AES 67 is the translator, if you will, to bring everyone else's equipment in together so that it can all talk to each other.
And Steve, for those who didn't know him at all, I had a great relationship with Steve because he was a brilliant engineer. He knew I didn't know really much of anything, yet he could still explain things so I would understand them to help with our customers back when I first started with BSW. And we were talking about the Telos 10 and the 1 and the 1x6 and things like that. And then, of course, the Zephyr and dealing with ISDN and that sort of a thing. So, and one of the great things was when I first started here, I had the late shift and I could call Telos at the end of the day, Pacific time, and Steve was there working late at night. And he'd answer my questions. It was great. What a guy.
You know what was neat with Steve, and it continues with Telos today. There are no stupid questions. So you know we're here to help,
Except that I'm
and
sure some of them said, it's Lynch on the line, but
no, especially with John, we know we'll take good care of you, and we'll take good care of our customers. Make sure that they have all the answers that they need.
anyway, now, what else can we do with this container concept that we're dealing with?
Well, one of the things that's kind of neat, John, and you being an old sportscaster, you probably really get into this. We've had a number of customers that have said, you know, I can't find board ops. Nobody wants to work anymore, and I've
Mm,
got a sporting event coming up, and I need a board op to run the board back at the radio station
yep.
while the sportscaster does his thing. Well, it normally ends up being either the general manager or the program director, and you know how long that's going to last. You
Oh, they
work all
love
day, and oh,
doing
by the
that.
way, you're
Yes.
working till 10 o'clock at night running a board.
Mhm.
Well, with Altus, we have the capability to optionalize a remote contribution and remote monitoring. And what this means is using the same technology that you and I are using right now with the Zoom call, being able to transmit audio from a remote location and mix it in the console and have that console be monitoring as well. All of that is available through Altus. And so all of a sudden now you put an Altus in the base console, the computer portion of it, into the studio, and then you use a web GUI to dial into it from your remote location. You use a headphone and microphone combination like I've got here, and your sportscaster runs the board. Can you imagine that? No board op needed. He can fire the spots, he can turn his mic on and off, he can run the entire console remotely. So it's really neat. So another place where this comes in real handy, say you've got a two-person morning show
Mhm.
and one of the people is in another market.
Right.
Well, you can have them run their programming from that other market and mix both consoles together or both locations together using the Altus. So the opportunities are almost limitless to what you can do, especially in the broadcasting setting.
It's amazing that people like Steve Church and the people that have succeeded him at Telos Alliance and other companies around the country, and Steve Church is not unique. I mean, a lot of engineers started companies because they couldn't find what they wanted to do or what they needed to do, and then they became successful, like Steve did. And we lost him, unfortunately, but what a great innovator he was. But the point is, you're doing things now we never even dreamed of back when I was on the air. He said, no way, couldn't possibly.
No,
And it's happening.
and coming back to the thing about putting a console in an afternoon. I mean, John, I don't know how many wires you've soldered and punched down, but I know it's been a lot for me. And it was a 2 week ordeal at least. And now to be able to just plug and play using the cable dongles and plug everything into the Ethernet jacks, you're in business in a very short period of time. And we can also, one of the things that's kind of neat, John, is that we can remotely set up the console. So if we need to get in and troubleshoot something, it is possible to do that remotely. So you don't need an engineer from Telos on site to be able to do that.
Very impressive. John, thanks for the visit. Always great to chat with you. And we really appreciate you being on this edition of BSW Tech Dive as we're talking Telos Alliance and the Altus SE. John, thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate your time. I'm John Lynch, BSW Tech Dive, and we'll see you next time.